just so everybody's clear, we're basically going to be going through some resources that are on the MWCC website, basically anything and everything you can find on our website, which includes a ton of resources, trainings, funding opportunities, all kinds of stuff. And this website is not me. This website is largely my coworkers, Kira and Ethan, who are way more tech savvy than me and who I might actually ask to jump in at some point if they're needed. But I just wanted to give a shout out to both of them for like making, I mean, we totally redid the website last year. And yeah, anyway, they both like have done a lot more technical stuff with this website than I have. And it's definitely been a team effort. So Kira, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kiera Davis. I'm the part-time Outreach and Communications Coordinator for MWCC. I'm a previous Big Sky Watershed Corps member, and I work remotely from Kentucky.
And we're glad she does. Ethan?
Hi, everyone. Ethan Kennard, Executive Director of Montana Watershed Coordination Council. Just good to see everyone, and thanks for joining. I'm excited for Terry to share some of these resources and to have a conversation. A big part of what we do at MWCC is just trying to connect people to resources. And being a statewide organization, what we've found is that one of the more efficient ways for us to do that is through our website. So that's kind of the focal point of the discussion today. And we've added a lot of new tools and resources to that website in the last couple of years that Terry's going to go into. So we just wanted to take the opportunity to share those so everyone's aware of some of the things that are available now, but also maybe get some feedback on things that we might want to consider adding or things that might be missing too. Just whatever ideas you all might have for ways that we can just better serve and support all of your different efforts. So thanks again, Terry, for hosting this.
Yeah, thanks for being here and for all the stuff on the website. So I'm going to share my screen now. I've got like a few slides and then we're going to dive into the actual website. But hopefully everybody can see my screen now. And so, yeah, this just resources for local watershed conservation. As Ethan said, that is our role. MWCC, we provide resources and connections to local watershed conservation efforts all across the state. And so most everything on our website is geared toward those things. And as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a little different than other conservation conversations. So feel free to chime in if you have a question about a particular resource or something. I'm not going to show every page, but if there's something you want to look at that I'm not showing, just chime in. I can see some people. I can't see the full view of everybody right now, but you can put something in the chat. You can also just unmute yourself and ask a question anytime. These are really casual, so don't be afraid to speak up if you have a question. And so just to show where we're headed here, I'm going to do a brief overview of the whole website, show you how to, a little about the MWCC network. For those of you, especially the Big Sky members, MWCC is the coordinator of this larger network, right? Conservation districts, watershed groups, state agencies, for-profit consulting firms, tribal agencies, anybody involved in conservation across the state. And then we'll spend the most time on the watershed conservation tools and the new Watershed Coordinators Forum. And then I'll also go over a little bit training and events and funding opportunities and a few other things on the website. But those are the main things we'll be spending time on. And so now I'm going to go to the website and I'm going to show my savvy, hopefully, with doing a different screen share. All right, can everybody see the website now?
Yep.
Thanks. I was like, or I'll have to take silence as yes. Okay, so here's our whole website. Pretty straightforward. We just have all the tabs, right? And I always kind of forget, there are things down here too. There's this amazing video about what the MWCC network is. There's all kinds of stuff lower down the page, right? But we're going to focus on the stuff in the top of the menus. The About Us, if you want to learn more about MWCC, our mission and what we do, basically uniting and supporting Montana's watersheds for healthy and productive watersheds. You can find our annual impact reports here, board and staff. Me, Kira, and Ethan, we are the staff. If you're curious about our board members, they're on here too. Committees, our supporters, many of you are MWCC members and supporters, so thank you for that. And you're all up here. We're in the process of updating this page right now. The one thing I want to, so that just took a minute, but yeah, so everybody who's a supporter is on here. And if you're not on here and want to be, reach out. We can tell you how to do that. But the one thing I want to point out in here, especially for Big Sky Watershed Core members right now, or anybody who might be applying for funding from the MWCC Watershed Fund, which I'll get into later, is this page, MWCC committees. Some of these are board committees, right? But if you scroll down here, we've also got these program committees. So the Water Committee and the Watershed Fund Committee. And these are people, most of whom are not on our board, but they help us with additional things. And like the Water Committee does a lot of, they're involved in some of the resources I'll show you today, more technical resources. They do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, helping us provide more water monitoring resources, just connecting us to the more technical ends of things, since we're such a capacity building organization. And you can see who the members are here. And for those of you who may apply for Watershed Fund grants, any grants that MWCC has, you can see who would be reviewing your applications. And we just have 3 members right now. We're trying to get a 4th. And for all the Big Sky Watershed Core funding that we have, Megan Gilmore from DEQ also helps us review those because that's her funding. So often like one of the funders will help too. But just so you know, these are the people who would be reviewing your applications. And you can always find them there. And I'm going to try to go back for a second here to see if I'm missing anything. Any questions about that part before I dive into some more stuff here? Okay. So the other thing you can find on the website is, as I showed, more about MWCC, but also more about what is a watershed organization. It's kind of like a little nebulous sometimes, and also how you can find local watershed organizations. Many of you are local watershed organizations, but how to find people in other areas of the state or in the watershed where you live. So back to the website. Under Montana's watersheds, there is that about watershed organizations. And we always talk about the watershed approach to conservation, which is sort of this distinct strategy that's basically a way of working collaboratively and inclusively within our watersheds. So you can find out more about that here. And then key is the watershed directory. You can find just about any organization that's working locally in Montana. So you can download the whole thing here. I believe it's a PDF if you do it. Yeah, it's a PDF. And you can also filter by basins, right? Clark Fork, Lower, Upper Missouri, Yellowstone, as well as the type of organization, right? So if you're looking for, these are all the watershed groups in the state, you can narrow it down to, watershed groups in the Clark Fork and Kootenai basins. And then you can find their contact information here. It's usually pretty basic, so we don't have to update it all the time, but it'll have their websites, their general email account, just so you're able to contact those organizations. Okay, and next we're going to dive into these MWCC resources that I'm going to spend the most time on. There's a couple. We're going to go through the conservation tools, and we've also got 2 new resources that I'm going to highlight. And just so you know, you can find this through the menu that that's not what I meant to do. Hang on. Yeah, so you can find all these things through the MWCC resources tab on the website. Got watershed conservation tools, all the things in here. Funding opportunities, Watershed Fund is MWCC's funding grants. And then funding opportunities are basically non-MWCC, all the other funding opportunities, training and events, inspiration, watershed stories, and stewardship awards. All this stuff you can find here, but you can also find it just by clicking on MWCC resources. And I've recommended to a lot of people that they just copy this link. I can drop it in the chat later, but it's basically mtwatersheds.org/resources, because this is going to give you like just an overview of all the resources you might want to find on the website. Starting with the watershed conservation tools, we've got the watershed resource library, which we just put up last year. Kira and I just checked all the links, so we think the links are working. But before I forget, there is a form at the bottom of this. if there's any problems with it, and especially if you want to submit a resource. Like if you go in here and you're like, hey, you don't have a resource on this thing and you have one, you can let us know and add to this, because we're trying to keep this a living document. I'm going to be doing some more updates this spring and just make sure this stays up to date and relevant. One of the big things I want to point out here at the top is, so this is, I know a lot of you are conservation districts or state agencies, and some of this stuff is specific to nonprofits, but not all of it by any means. And so there are a few for nonprofits specifically, especially the Montana Nonprofit Association Resource Library. They have so much stuff on strategic planning and board governance and bylaws and all those things that are less conservation focused, but things that nonprofits kind of need to do. I really highly recommend you check out these things as well. And then getting into the resources that are actually on here, we've got two tabs. We've got the watershed conservation resources, which are more technical things, and then capacity and organizational resources. And on either one of these, it's same thing. You can search by a keyword. You can, if you just want to find communicate things on communications, there's all the resources on communications here. You can, yeah, project prioritization and development. Luckily, some of the groups we work with have shared some great resources with us and allowed them to put it on here. Equity, inclusion, and justice and conservation. You can just click on any of these to find those resources. Same thing on the technical side. Biological information, mapping and GIS, or some like free GIS freeware on here, monitoring resources, all the things on here. So it's a really super easy to search database. And I find that now probably 2/3 of the time when someone asks me a question about certain resources, I'm like, go to the Watershed Resource Library, because it's usually in there. So before I move on from this, any questions on the Watershed Resource Library or anything so far? Okay, I will carry on and go back to the resources page. A couple other things I want to show just a little more briefly is there's the watershed monitoring resources. And that, when I mentioned the water committee, they are the ones who put this together, especially Adam Sigler at Montana State University. They're the, well, MSU Extension. They host this whole page. But basically we have a monitoring directory, which is, as far as we know, pretty close to every water monitoring program in the entire state. So anybody who's doing monitoring in Montana is on here. And then there's a library of resources to support water monitoring efforts. And I'll just show the monitoring directory briefly, because again, if you're involved in a water monitoring program or you're looking to start one, it's often a great resource to reach out to other organizations who are looking to do similar things. Like say you're wanting to see who's monitoring for aquatic invasive species in lakes and reservoirs. And well, let's just see if and then you can choose the type of organization, the type of data that they're, all these things. But if you wanted to do AIS stuff in lakes and reservoirs, you get to, okay, yeah, so we have 7 results here. And so you can click on that monitoring programs link and find all the information about them, their website, ways to contact them, all of that stuff. Ethan, did you have something to add? I just saw you hop on your video. No? Okay, great. So yeah, so this is just a really great resource for finding out who's monitoring what. If you're looking for data, right, on a specific thing, reach out to the people who are collecting that data, right?
Hey, Terry,
Mhm.
Jeff Ryan,
Yeah.
I assume you probably have the Water Quality Protection District here in Helena on that water monitoring resource.
Good question. Let's see. So yeah.
It'd be local, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we'd be local government. So you would be local government. Let's see. Because if we don't, we should get you on here or get them on here. We've got Gallatin Local Water, Helena Area Water Quality Monitoring, Lewis and Clark Water Quality Protection District. Yep.
There you go. Very good.
They're on there. And we usually update this. We strive for once a year. Sometimes it's every 1.5 or 2 years to reach out. It's a big deal to reach out to all these groups and make sure everything's updated. And so if you're ever around, as with any part of the website, we would love it. If you find information that's out of date or a link that doesn't work, please let us know, because it's a big thing to keep up with. There's a lot on here. Also the real-time monitoring tools. This is just a collection. None of these are, our resources, but all kinds of stuff on drought monitors. If you want to know what Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks restrictions there might be on fishing access sites right now, stream gauges, how to know what the levels of the different streams are, air quality, snowpack, wildfire resources. You can see where the latest wildfires are this summer, just links to all kinds of outside resources for real-time monitoring of these things. A new thing, this came out of the Yellowstone floods. We hosted an event a few months ago for everybody who was affected by the Yellowstone flooding in the conservation world to come together and share resources, among other things. And so this is a whole page of the resources that they came up with. And it's really great stuff, not just for initial disaster response, but also for that sort of longer view of like, how do we plan for the next disaster? There's a lot on there. There's also more on that in the Watershed Resource Library. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight here is the new Watershed Coordinators Forum. I know Wendy has signed up for this. Oh, and Chris maybe too. I think you're both on there. So this is brand new last week. We've been working on it for a while, had people beta testing it. And this is the place to go if you look at all those resources and you still can't find what you're looking for. You can go here and ask a specific question. And we've got probably 15 people on here now and hoping to increase that. And then Kira and I are monitoring it weekly, which is just people putting questions in like, hey, I'm looking, does anyone have a procurement policy? Hey, we're looking for an example of an employee handbook. Is anybody familiar with this particular type of restoration? You can ask all those questions on the forum. And when you go to this webpage, you have to register for it. So you have to fill out this really short form. Just tell us who you are, because we don't want just anybody on there. It needs to be local Montana conservation people. And then we'll send you a code. And there's this whole setup guide that you can go to learn how to register and how to navigate the site once you're there. And then I'll just go to the forum itself, where we've got a list of topics. And so you can post under any of, you'll see there's some things under here already where people have posted threads, material, if you've got, if you need fencing, right? If you're a Big Sky Watershed Corps member and you're like, hey, does anybody have any leftover fencing so we don't have to buy some? You put that on here. All kinds of different topics. If there's a topic we're missing, let us know. Maybe we could add something. But you basically can add a post to any of these places under organizational, planning. You can do a new post. You can respond to an existing post. All that stuff here. Does anybody have any questions about the coordinators forum or want to know more?
I have a question. This is Megan.
Sure.
So, if you are to post to the forum, how do you just periodically check back to see if someone has responded, or do you receive an email notification?
Great question. You can choose that, right? So I'll go into this one. I actually responded to Chris, put this one in here. By the way, Chris Evans is looking for emergency response planning documents. If anyone has one of those they would be willing to share, you can respond here. So if I want to reply to her quote or to her thread, you can click the reply button and it gives you all these options. And then down here at the bottom, you've got thread subscriptions. So you can just choose to subscribe and receive email notifications, which is what I would recommend, right? Because then you'll get an email if somebody responds. But you can also choose not to receive emails or to do other things.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. And so again, this is just the page to let us know you want to register for that. And so those are all the tools, very, very briefly. And then the funding opportunities are a lot more straightforward. Basically, you've got the MWCC Watershed Fund, which is MWCC's own. We basically sub-grant funds from different government agencies as well as foundations. And so you can click on this button here for current funding opportunities. We use this submittable platform, and it'll show you everything that's live right now. And basically we have Big Sky Watershed Core funding if you're not, and this funding is all restricted to Big Sky Watershed Core members who are working with host sites, improving water quality, working on watershed restoration plans approved by DEQ. You've probably talked to me if you qualify for this funding. And so the better way, like if you want to know more about these funding opportunities, if you don't already know about them, is to scroll on here. And so this, before I get to that, there is more information here about what we think, what the impacts of the Watershed Fund are, what we want them to be, is in the theory of change here. And this is just sort of what we're trying to achieve with the Watershed Fund, if you want to know more about that. But the different funding opportunities, you can learn more here. We've got capacity funding, which is sort of our most flexible funding from foundations and things. Project funding is for on-the-ground projects. Professional development funding, small grants for going to workshops and trainings, and then our Big Sky Watershed Core funding. So you can click on any of those to learn more about those. And like, for example, if you click on the Big Sky Watershed Core funding right now, then you'll see our two, like right now we have professional development funding for Big Sky Watershed Core members and host sites, as well as project funding. So if you go to any of those individual tabs, you can also see, we don't have any other funding opportunities right now, but if you click on capacity, you're going to see if we have a capacity support grant. We generally have those in the fall. Projects are a little more sporadic now, just depending on what we've got. I know a couple people mentioned funding. Does anybody have a question about Watershed Fund funding specifically?
Is there a certain time of year that you get these funds and then disperse them out?
Yeah, that's a good question. It completely depends. The Big Sky Watershed Core is always that same time. Like we always have funding to help organizations host members. That's always like late summer so that they know about that funding before they apply to host a member. The project funding for Big Sky Watershed Core members is always like around now, like February, March. Capacity funding is usually in the late summer or more likely fall. Project funding is kind of sporadic. It just depends on when we get it. And all of this depends on, our funding sources, but those are the ones we usually talk about. Okay. And then all the other funding sources, I think we do a pretty good, darn good job. We, as in Kira is the one who keeps this page and a lot of the pages on this website updated. We really try to make this like any funding opportunity that would apply to watershed conservation in Montana. So it's pretty comprehensive, not that we don't miss things. And if we ever do, let us know, we can put it on here. But generally most things are, right now we've got, but it's always in order of like what's due next. So like there's a couple DNRC grants that are due in 2 days, and then you scroll down and you'll get things further out. DEQ, Bureau of Reclamation, we have some private things every once in a while, National Wildlife Federation. But this is basically any funding opportunity, any grant that we know about that is in Montana right now for watershed conservation. And these are also, just so you know, hopefully, that's one thing I haven't pointed out yet. If you're not already subscribed to the Watershed News, the MWCC's Watershed newsletter, you can subscribe to that here. Oops, I already lost it, but right at the top of the page, every page, you click here to sign up for our Watershed newsletter and subscribe to that, because we do post all the funding opportunities in there too. It's always going to be on the webpage. The easiest thing to do is just go there. But in Watershed News, we'll put opportunities, resources, all kinds of things, both on our website and elsewhere. And then just scrolling, and then we've also got training and events. MWCC puts on a bunch of training and events. We had 2 workshops last year. We always have an annual meeting, and our annual meeting is coming up. I'm going to forget the date until I can find it on here. Is April 26th. So that'll be our annual meeting in Helena. We haven't opened registration for that, but you'll find more information here when that's up. And you can also find information about past annual meetings too. Like we often have resources shared at that meeting if you want to go back or just find out what happened at the last one. And I'm not going to click on these, but we also, the conservation conversations are on here, right? This event that you're at right now. I will go to this one just briefly because you can see like we've got 2 more upcoming conservation conversations. Kiera is going to be leading one next month on communications for very small conservation organizations. And then we're going to have one in May on forestry funding partnerships. And so you can always find that information and register here. And then when you scroll down, you can see all the past conversations, including the recordings and the slides and any other resources that were shared. So this one, within a week or so, will be up on here too, for people who didn't attend or just want to look at the slides or want to be reminded of any of those things. Any questions on funding, training, or events? Okay. And then continuing on, we've got Big Sky Watershed Corps. So for those of you who are not in Big Sky Watershed Corps, you can learn more about that. Those Big Sky Watershed Corps specific funding opportunities are also in here, just in another place. You can find that same page here. We also have a jobs board that is for career opportunities in conservation in Montana. And we are currently only posting job opportunities from those supporting members, where I showed you that page earlier of like our 2022 supporters. So basically, if you're an MWCC member supporter, we will post your jobs on here for free. So it is not comprehensive. It is not every single conservation job in Montana, but it's a pretty good snapshot of jobs that are available in the conservation world right now. Great place for Big Sky Watershed Corps members come, you know, September, October, when you're starting to look for jobs after your term is over. So yeah, there's 4 on here right now, and it just depends. Yeah, there's often a lot. And then the last section is kind of my favorite section. It's the news and inspiration section. It's not so much of a resource, but it could provide examples for you of like, you know, communications things you might want to do. The Watershed News that I mentioned, you can also sign up for that here. We had this whole great campaign of watershed stories a number of years ago that are just some information about stories about people doing local watershed conservation work across Montana and why they do it. So if you're familiar with any of these watersheds, or if you're not and just want to learn more about them, there's a short video with each of them, as well as some visual print resources with most of them. And so you can just, yeah, learn about the Bitterroot Waterfall, the Granite Headwaters Watershed Group. And the other one that I will click on, 2 more I will click on. One is the Watershed Stewardship Awards that just closed yesterday. So we were looking for nominations. We actually have to update this page still, but we're looking for nominations for people who are just doing a great job of collaborative conservation in Montana. And we'll be awarding those in the coming month. And part of our annual meeting in April, we'll be recognizing these people and organizations who've won these Watershed Stewardship Awards. So that's just always there's just so many people out there doing great work, and it's an opportunity to highlight that. And then I believe, yes, the last thing I'm going to click on is the Life in the Land film series. Just for those of you who might not be aware, it is amazing. So Laura Tomoff is a videographer, storyteller with Stories for Action, and she worked with a number of our partners across the state to create these videos. And they're not short. They're like 45 minutes, like almost feature length videos. There's one with the Blackfeet Nation, one in the Big Hole, one in the Blackfoot River. Sorry, I'm gonna forget all of them, Ethan. Big Hole, yeah. There's just here they are. Central Montana, Blackfeet Nation, Sealy Swan region, and the Big Hole Valley. And I think they're working on more. But these are just like, if you ever want to be inspired and just watch some amazing filmmaking from the Montana conservation world, highly recommended. And I believe, does anybody have any more questions about this page? Okay, and I am gonna.
Carrie, I don't have a question, but I want to say that Stories for Action, their social media, they post great like short clips and how those videos relate and are important in getting legislative action and different things like that. I highly recommend following their social media.
Yeah, thanks. And then did you want to add anything else, Kiera, as far as like resources I didn't mention or any other tips for people?
Nothing that I won't be talking about next month.
Awesome. And we'll plug that again at the end too. So yeah, this is my contact information. On here, you can also find Kiera and Ethan's contact information on the website. But again, if you see anything wrong, any broken links or anything where you're like, hey, and we're going to talk about this now, we've got some time to chat. But yeah, if you're like, hey, what about this resource? Is there something else to add? Or for anything, I'm just a resource generally in the collaborative conservation world in Montana. So feel free to reach out. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so we can see one another again. And so, yeah, we have a little bit of time. Did anybody have any questions about those resources, ideas of things we're missing, things you need, things you might want to post to the coordinators forum, anything at all?
It's amazing.
Terry.
Good job.
Thanks, Bonnie.
This is Jeff. At the very beginning, you had that directory for watershed groups. Is there perhaps a link on that to the directory for conservation districts?
That's funny. There is a link to the directory for conservation districts in the Watershed Resource Library, but Ethan, is it? I don't know if we have it on there. Because we do have contact information for all the watershed. Here, I'll show you. Like we have CD, but I don't think we have a link to that actual directory, which maybe is something we just need to add here and fix.
Well, I believe that we do have CDs in that directory, though. So
yeah, we do.
I thought we at the bottom had, yeah, there is at the bottom a link to the full directory for MACD as well as the Montana Forest Collaboration Network, so you can access both of those directories too.
Yeah, I'll share that here. But I'm glad you brought this up, Jeff, because I just fixed the link has changed for the CD directory. It's now on the MACD site instead of the NRC. So I just fixed that in the Watershed Resource Library. And now I have to fix it here too. But I'll just briefly share my screen again to show everybody where you can find that. Yeah, so in the Watershed directory, you can of course just search by conservation districts, like Ethan was saying, and it will show all the conservation districts in Montana. And then also at the bottom, this link is incorrect because I forgot to update it here, but I will right after we're done. I'll update this to the MACD. So it has all the conservation districts and the conservation district directory that MACD hosts, as well as, I forgot about this, the Montana Forest Collaboration Network has a list of forest collaboratives too that we also work with. So those are both here, and I will update the links later today. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Bonnie, did you have anything else besides that?
No, I just can't wait to get on there and have some people in our office know, instead of having to look every which way, find something. That's awesome.
Yeah, and honestly, as I was going through the Watershed Resource Library today to check for all the broken links in case there were still broken links on there, I was actually myself like, oh shoot, like I forgot this was on here. Like I need to look at, there's just so much great stuff on there. So
yeah, that's great.
Oh, it looks like I've got something in the chat. I don't know if that's from a ways ago. Oh, Chris had to hop off. And I will just while I'm waiting to see if anybody has any more questions, I'll drop the specific links for Watershed News and that Watershed Resource Library in the chat. Actually,
Terry, I had already dropped the resource
you're the
link in
best.
there.
Thank you. Look at that. I didn't see it while I was screen sharing. Awesome. Thanks.
Also, I wanted to point out Megan had said that she found her current position through Watershed News and our job board.
Yes. All right. Thanks for being with us, Haley. Yeah, great. I'm glad to hear that, Megan. Any other tales of how you've used the MWCC website? Well, if there aren't any other questions, and I'll still leave a moment for that, Ethan, if you wanted to share anything, or Kiera, otherwise we can let people, like, we don't have to stay on until 1 o'clock. We can give you, 15 extra minutes in your day.
Thank you so much for sharing all this.
Yeah, thanks for being here,
Great
Bonnie.
research.
Good to meet you. And
You
everybody,
too.
glad
Yeah.
to be here. So
Yeah, well, thanks for putting this together, Terry. One other thing that we might mention. So the Watershed newsletter, hopefully everyone is signed up or will be signed up for that. But one of the things that we're going to be doing sometime in the coming year is doing kind of a spin-off of that. So I think it was maybe Chris that mentioned when we first came on that one of the things they're looking for is funding for a particular environmental education center. But I think one of the requests that we commonly get is just more information about funding that's available. We have the funding page that Terry showed, but we're always trying to find better ways to just connect people to available funding resources that are out there, especially kind of more diverse funding resources that not everyone is always looking for, such as private grants and just kind of the whole private foundation world that's out there. And so we're going to be developing a separate newsletter similar to the Watershed news that's just going to be focused on available funding. Not sure if that's going to be on a monthly or quarterly basis, or just kind of as we're able to put it together. But hopefully you'll be able to see that sometime in the near future. And we'll just include everyone on that list, and then people can opt out if they're not interested in getting that information. But just one more way that we're trying to just provide some useful resources to folks, and just kind of be responsive to the different things that we're hearing from people and the Watershed Network across the state.
yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Ethan. All right. And with that, yeah, just good to see. It's always great to see like some familiar faces and some people like Megan and Bonnie who I've never met before. So yeah, glad you could all be here. And again, reach out if you have any more questions with the website or anything. Bye all.
Thank you.
Thank you.